A school trip that was supposed to be just a fun time for teenagers turned into a tragedy that no one could have imagined. When a 16-year-old girl returned home from a day at the beach with her classmates and a teacher, her parents immediately realized that something was terribly wrong. She looked pale and strange, but insisted that everything was fine. A few hours later, the absolute silence coming from the bathroom would reveal an unimaginable horror and launch a criminal investigation that would shock an entire community. What really happened during those hours away from home? Why didn't anyone seek medical help when it was obvious that it was needed? And what was the true intention behind that seemingly innocent outing? If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, take advantage now to subscribe and follow more real cases every week. Let's get to the facts. While preparing this episode, I couldn't help but reflect on the responsibility we all have towards our teenagers. It's essential to keep our eyes open, even in the midst of the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Adolescence is a delicate period, when walls are erected between parents and children, making it even more important to be vigilant about friendships, places they frequent, and, of course, school. No matter how good an educational institution is, problems such as bullying, disputes, and confusing situations can arise there. It was precisely at school that the story of Esmeralda, a 16-year-old girl who studied in the Dominican Republic, began. It was February 12, 2023, when the girl insisted that her parents let her go on a trip to the beach with some friends. Concerned, her parents decided to check the details of the outing. Isabel Martinez, Esmeralda's mother, called John Kelly, the school's math teacher, directly to make sure he would be there to supervise the group. "Take care of my daughter for me. I'm only letting her out because she'll be under your responsibility," the mother told the educator. It was just an activity on the beach in Macau, no international travel or dangerous activities. A simple outing, where 4 teenagers would be accompanied by their teacher. However, when the daughter returned from this walk, she was acting very strangely. Around midnight, she arrived home with a friend and the teacher who had brought them in. Her parents immediately noticed something was wrong and confronted their daughter about her behavior. "Daughter, you look strange. You're pale," her mother asked. "I have nothing wrong, Mommy," Esmeralda replied, adding that she was having menstrual cramps. Isabel insisted, "You look different to me. Tell me what's wrong." She even asked if her daughter had taken drugs or medication, as she seemed ill. Faced with the teenager's constant refusals, the family ended up following their normal routine and going to bed. During the early hours of the morning, the father heard his daughter talking on the phone, telling someone that she was feeling better. The next morning, when he went to wake her up to get ready for class, Esmeralda was not in her room. She also did not respond to her mother's calls to come out of the bathroom. Unfortunately, minutes later, the girl was found dead in the bathroom of the residence. Completely shocked and in disbelief, the parents called the police. The teenager's body was sent to the medical examiner's office for forensic analysis and determination of the cause of death. At this point, you might be thinking about overdose or even suicide, but the reality was much more disturbing. The coroner's report revealed that Esmeralda died due to intimate vaginal and uterine injuries, with extreme and acute internal bleeding, resulting in hemorrhagic shock. There were also marks on the body that suggested a struggle or defense, although these have not been fully clarified by the sources. Evidently, sexual abuse and non-consensual rape were initially considered. The perpetrator would need to be discovered and arrested. Another possibility would be a tragic accident during consensual intercourse, similar to cases previously reported where young people died from hemorrhaging during intimate activities. To unravel the mysteries of this case, we need to investigate more deeply the victim and the events of that night. Esmeralda was 16 years old and lived with her parents and a younger sister. She was in high school and was a typical representative of her generation, very active on social media, especially on TikTok. She dreamed of being a model, but she was hiding an important secret. It was clear from her posts that the teenager was deeply in love, a relationship that required absolute secrecy. Her moments of happiness exposed online were interspersed with episodes of melancholy, a common behavior in adolescence. But in this case, it was more exaggerated. The reason was her romantic relationship with 35-year-old Professor John Kelly Martinez, which had turned into something much more serious than a simple platonic crush. Sources suggest a dangerous power dynamic, considering the age difference. and the professional position of the man who had authority over the girl. That strategic outing on the night of February 12th was probably not the first time the two had been alone together. Three of Esmeralda's friends, John Kelly and Rubiel Meridio Martinez, the professor's nephew or cousin, took part in the outing. Until the day of the tragedy, apparently no one knew about the teacher's irregular activity with the teenager. Or if they did know, they hid it very well. According to the complaint filed on June 14, 2024 before the District Court of La Alta Gracia, John Martinez's intention in organizing that outing was exclusively to take sexual advantage of the victim due to her vulnerability, taking her to an unknown location. The destination was El Cortado Beach. Esmeralda got into Martinez's car at around 7:30 p.m. at the door of his house in Vista Alegre, in the city of Higue. When they arrived at their destination, the professor took Esmeralda away from the group and walked with her to a more secluded spot. In alleged complicity, her cousin Rubiel moved away to another area of the same beach with the other three girls. Even without being categorical, we can mention that Rubiel had a quantity of alcoholic beverages available to the group, which normally should not be present on an outing with teenagers away from their guardians. Esmeralda's victimization is evident in the details revealed by the autopsy performed by the National Institute of Forensic Sciences on February 19th. The prosecution defined it as an assault that caused uncontrollable bleeding as a result of extreme physical violence. From there began a tortuous journey with several stops before Esmeralda arrived home in the way I described at the beginning, where her parents noticed that something was wrong. First, the group went to a gas station where the 16-year-old girl used the bathroom. Then they went to a nearby pharmacy where they bought sanitary pads, a box of emergency contraceptive pills, and a bottle of water. It is worth knowing that the basis of the morning after pill is progesterone, a female hormone that in large quantities can inhibit ovulation, more than circumstantial evidence of what had happened. From the pharmacy, they went to a store where Martinez bought clothes for Esmeralda. Then they stopped at the home of one of the teenagers in the group so she could change. The clothes she left at the house, including her wallet, were returned by her classmate about 3 days later. Prosecutors alleged that human blood and semen were found on the discarded clothes. After leaving the house, they headed to the girls' family home, leaving behind a blue plastic bag with other evidence, which was recovered days later by investigators. Other bloody clothing was also added to the investigation. According to the prosecutor's office, everyone present knew that Esmeralda had been a victim of sexual violence and that she needed urgent medical attention, as she had been bleeding irregularly for several hours. They passed by several health centers along the way, but nothing was done. In a cruel and inhumane way, the group found it more convenient to take the girl home and cover up the crime. A teacher and several high school teenagers who had never heard in class that constant bleeding can cause very serious problems. Literally, while Esmeralda bled to death, everyone went to their corner to hide without providing the medical assistance she urgently needed, certainly telling her to keep her mouth shut. A situation so absurd that if it were part of a film, we could say that it does not correspond to reality. Here, the teacher's total lack of character is confirmed. The autopsy report later mentioned lacerations, abrasions, and bruises. However, the attacker stated that it was a consensual sexual relationship. Some sources mentioned that Esmeralda was pregnant, and that John Kelly performed an abortion on her to cover up the unwanted pregnancy, a consequence of the relationship with his underage student. We can't even imagine what he was capable of. We do not know whether specific tests were carried out to detect a possible pregnancy, or whether the intimate assault could have masked a previous pregnancy. This information remained uncertain in the sources consulted. The horrible scenario that Esmeralda's family had to deal with was rape and death that prematurely interrupted a life full of dreams and achievements. It is worth noting that John Kelly was married to another teacher, and the couple has 2 children, one of whom attended the same school where the father worked. It was later determined that the school administration had discovered a week before the crime that the teacher was harassing the 16-year-old girl, but no action was taken. It is unbelievable to neglect a situation like this for fear of causing harm to the institution. After the tragedy, psychologists from the Ministry of Education provided support to the victim's family, the relatives of the accused, and Esmeralda's colleagues. The police requested that the public prosecutor's office place the teacher in preventive detention for 12 months. John Kelly Martinez was incarcerated as suspect number 1. as he was the adult responsible for the outing that ended in the teenager's death. As a brief aside, the outing was strange and questionable. 4 girls with 2 adult men. As the father of a girl, I get goosebumps just thinking about a situation like that. During the investigation, the authorities recovered the vehicle in which the professor traveled with Esmeralda and the others. Don't miss this detail. The vehicle was a black Honda Accord X16 that was sold shortly after the tragedy. The sale was made by Jace Berenice Espinal Rivero for the sum of 850,000 Dominican pesos. This amount was paid in cash plus a post-dated check. The buyer was Frank Eligio Paniagua Pilier, who, upon learning of the criminal case and the death of the teenager, voluntarily handed the vehicle over to the authorities. We have a person with character who said, "This has to be delivered." After researching, we discovered that Jace, the person who sold the car, is the wife of the perverted teacher. She is also a teacher and is listed on the Ministry of Education's payroll as an elementary school teacher. Initially, we thought that Jace was innocent, just another victim of her husband. However, with the sale of the vehicle, it seems that she has become an accomplice, hiding evidence and protecting her husband. During the investigation, she was detained 4 times and was outraged by this. In the words of her lawyer, the facts were individual. She was innocent, and her children were being affected, being left alone on the occasions when she was taken to the police station. The defense also claimed that the people truly responsible for Esmeralda's death were the girl's parents who did not take her to a hospital. It is unbelievable that they would have the courage to say something like that. The children must really be suffering, as I said. The poor things are not to blame for having a despicable father and a mother who needs to wake up from this spell that this pervert put on her. The buyer of the vehicle, which was actually the crime scene, was also temporarily detained and had to explain himself to the court. His nephew, Rubiel Moridio Martinez, who was at the beach, was also detained for being involved in the case. After being released on bail, he remained at the disposal of the authorities, having to periodically report to the court until the trial. It is incredibly low to accuse the victim's family of not taking her to the hospital. We are talking about a teenager who arrived already suffering, bleeding, and who was not going to tell her parents that she had been raped because she was already involved with the teacher. An extremely delicate situation that began long before this final episode. Putting everything on the parents' shoulders is a huge shame. Let's ignore the lack of ethics, morals, respect, and character of the teacher, and also of the woman who sold the evidence of the crime, and throw it at the back of the parents who are already suffering with grief. The prosecution's document defined the case against John Kelly Martinez and Rubiel Moridio Martinez as torture and barbarity, a premeditated crime with the perpetrators involved in all actions, including the concealment of the facts, such as going to the bathroom and purchasing various items after the abuse, plus the attempt to eliminate evidence. To support the accusations, there were several images of the places where they had been, which made it impossible for them to claim innocence. The teenagers who were in the group were interviewed exhaustively. They all admitted that they did not trust anyone to report what had happened, as there were hidden threats until it became a police case. On March 14, 2024, the Higi City Court tried and convicted John Kelly Martinez, 35, on charges of rape and sexual assault of the teenager Esmeralda, including disrespect for the laws protecting the fundamental rights of children and adolescents. His defense requested a 5-year sentence for sexual abuse, while the prosecution requested 30 years in prison. The defendant's lawyers argued that there was consent, based on expert reports and witnesses. A disgrace, once again. It was an emotional trial that lasted a long time, as there were 51 witnesses. In the end, John Kelly was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The defense's argument that there was consent because they were involved is true. There was probably already a relationship. But does that justify what this guy did to this girl? She could have consented to an intimate act, but she did not consent to him causing such violence. It is very nerveless to say something like that. The Criminal Chamber of the Court of Appeals ordered in June of 2024 the opening of a trial on the merits against Rubiel Murillo Martinez. The boy had been acquitted in 2023 because there was not enough evidence to place him as a fundamental part in the crime. But the appeals court overturned that acquittal and upheld the prosecution's case against him, while dropping the charges of murder, barbaric act, and possession of an illegal weapon. If it was exactly as reported, he participated in the sense of moving the group away so the predator could act. Therefore, the court determined that the defendant be tried for complicity in the assault and abuse based on the juvenile code. There are some loose ends in this case. We don't know what happened to the wife after she sold the car. We cannot know if it was just to comply with her husband's orders, or if there was real complicity, whether she will be tried or not. We also don't know the fate of the 3 girls who were with Esmeralda. 3 girls who could be the next victims, who had their lives marked forever that night, and who will live haunted by the memories. I wonder if poor Esmeralda is the only victim of a pervert disguised as a teacher. This "let's go for a walk on the beach" seems like a modus operandi. It feels like there was a method. Cousin, move away with the little girls and I'll come here. It's very strange. We need to investigate this. Adapting a phrase from Nelson Rodriguez to conclude, I hope that the justice system there does not release the guy early, because whoever is a scoundrel the day before is a scoundrel the next day too. And you, what did you think of this case? Leave your opinion in the comments and take the opportunity to suggest other cases that you would like to see here on the channel. If you are not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Until the next case.